Hey there YouTube, this is Dave and we're going to have another great video. This time we're actually going to take the information that the form is capturing in Microsoft Forms and we're going to actually move it into a SharePoint list so that way we can use it later in any different number of ways. So let's go ahead and get started. As a reminder, let's take a quick look at the form that we're going to grab the information from and put into the SharePoint list. You may remember this from previous videos. This is the soil assessment form. This form, we have 5 questions. We're going to capture that information and we're going to put it in the SharePoint list. Let's go ahead and switch over to that SharePoint list now. Here we are in the list for the soil enrichment data capture. As you can see, this is just exactly how we did prior. We can see that this is something that we created using best practices, using underscores. You can see the underscores here in the size underscore in underscore and then acres. We did this across the boards. We wanted to make sure that the column names are pretty simple to work with when we actually do get into Power Automate, which is what we're going to jump into now. So let's head there. Welcome to Power Automate. Here is where the magic is going to happen. One of the things I want to show you, for those of you with a large environment, large tenant, you might be with an enterprise, you might be with a mid-sized company, there is a high likelihood that your IT will administer an environment specifically for you, especially if you're going to build a solution that is a business critical solution or may use premium features which will need additional licensing. All this needs to be kept in mind when you come up with a workflow idea or a concept. If that's the case, let me bring to your attention up here in the right, you will be able to select on environments and select and then actually create another one. I'm sorry. Most likely it'll be created for you by your IT. There are very few companies out there that will allow you to just on a whim decide to create your own environment. That's just something that from a best practice standpoint, especially if you want to continue to monitor and keep costs down, that is something that and IT would want to keep in mind. So, but this is where it would be. And in large companies, I would say anything above 5,000, you could have a numerous list of different environments that you will have to deal with. So this is something to keep in mind. In this case, because mine's a very small tenant, I'm just going to go ahead and keep it with the default. As you can see, come along with M365 as the default. I'm okay with that. So let's go ahead and continue. The first thing we need to do is we need to create a flow. So let's go ahead and hit the create button. And there's all different kinds here, as you can see. One of the things that I want, however, and this is one that's probably going to be the most commonly used, is the automated cloud flow. The automated cloud flow is something happens, and when that something does happen, you want this to start up and do what you need to do, whether it's a business process, whether it's just a reminder, whatever the case may be, whatever you decide to make this flow do for you, this is where it's going to happen. This is where the magic's going to happen. So let's go and click on that. One of the, at least in my experiences, one of the top forms, if not is this one right here. When a new response is submitted, Microsoft Forms. This is the one that you're going to use. So let's go ahead. I'm going to check that first. Let's give it a good name. So let's see here. Soil assessment. So soil assessment Nope. There we go. Soil assessment, and I did spell it wrong. I can do that. Apparently, just not to. Fine. I'll add it manually. And then data capture. There we go. So here it is, soil assessment data capture. Then what we're going to do is make sure, yes, it is indeed when a new response is submitted. Perfect, that's what I want. And I'm going to hit create. It's as easy as that. All right, now as you can see here, I'm going to put this up here a little bit higher. As you can see here, This is the new visual, and you can see it up here in the top right corner, New Designer. Currently we're in the New Designer. Just like everything else that's new, there's going to be things that work really, really well and things that has not caught up yet. So there's a chance that you might switch between the two. Well, before I have started anything, let me go ahead and turn New Designer off just to show you the difference. And I'm not going to go ahead and send feedback right now. But I do recommend if you do switch back, let them know why. Say, hey, I was looking for this to work in this such and such a way. That's how it worked in the older form or in the older designer. Make sure you tell them. Let them know. The new one's not going to get fixed without your feedback and your input. And the one thing Microsoft is good at is actually listening to that feedback. It's one of the biggest reasons why SharePoint 2007, for example, was their fastest growing server product, at least as far as I know, to this day, because of the fact that they did 97% of the changes were between 2003 and 2007 were requests made by the user community. Keep that in mind. Use that feedback. Believe it or not, it will be listened to. If they may not make a choice on it, they may not make a decision, it may not go the way you're hoping it for, but at least know that Microsoft is actually really good about doing that. All right, back to it. I'm helping, don't worry. So as I can see here, I have the ability to pick a form. But when I do this drop down, I'll tell you right now, the chances are it's going to look and it's only going to find next week's potluck. If you remember from our Microsoft Forms video of what best practices are, you're going to remember that this one is assigned to me. I did not change this to be assigned to a Microsoft team, like Woodology, for example. This one, it's next week's potluck. Once next week's potluck is over, it's going to be done with. I'll probably delete the form and we're good. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to find that form ID and actually use the enter custom value and put it in there. So give me 1 second. Let me go grab that because I hear the iron ringing. Just a minute. Okay, as you can see here, we have a Microsoft Form URL. It's long, it's ugly, but there's a lot of important things to this. One of the biggest things, and the whole reason why I came to show you this, is as we were talking about before, we actually wanted to know what the ID for this soil assessment form, which you can see behind Notepad, we need its ID. Well, when you take the URL, when you're making edits and changes to it, one of the biggest things that you can see is the ID is right here. ID equals. Everything after that is your form ID. Yes, that includes the underscore. Literally to the end of the URL, all that information captures what the form ID is. This is what we want. So let me go ahead and copy that. Control C, and then let's jump back to the actual Power Automate. We're back into Power Automate, and let's go ahead now and enter a custom value. Control V for paste. And so there we go. So that is the form ID. With all that information, it looks like gobbledygook. I get it. I totally understand. It's absolute nonsense. Not a problem. Let's go ahead and add a new step. Step 2. So in step 2, what we're going to do is we're going to actually, now that it's captured, we're going to go ahead and do forms. So we're going to actually go through and get the response details. You can see that right here. So that is what we're going to do. We're going to click on that. We're going to get the response details. Once again, it's asking for the form ID. Well, good for us. It's still in our clipboard. So let's go ahead and do that. Enter custom value. Paste that. And then there we go. And then this, the response ID. Hey, look, it's response ID. It's amazing. It's all dynamic. A lot. You're going to be using dynamic content constantly. So do not worry. It's going to happen, guaranteed. So what is dynamic content? Basically, anything that comes previous to the slot, the step, whatever you want to call it, the box, each box below. Think of it as you're starting from the top and you're working your way down. Well, as you continue to add boxes, there may be more dynamic content available to you as the time goes. Now, as we continue doing these videos, I guarantee you there are going to be other videos that in the future that we will get into that a lot more deeply. Well, why don't I see it here, but I can see it here? Why can't I get this information, or whatever the case may be, is very unique as to how to understand that with the hierarchy of how you're building your Power Automate, this workflow, and you want to make sure you do things in the correct sequence, the correct order, to make sure that it's actually captured properly. So easily enough, response ID. That's literally all there is to it. So now we got the response details. So all 5 answers to all the 5 questions. We're going to go to the next step. Well, what's the next step? Well, this is going to be a really simple one. What we want to do is actually put this information from the Microsoft form into the SharePoint list. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in SharePoint. There we go. Let's click on SharePoint. That way we can only see the SharePoint things much better. And we're going to create an item. Hey, here it is. Check that out. It says create item. That's exactly what we were looking for. Let's go ahead and create that item. And as you saw, for a little while, it took a few seconds to actually be able to do that. The reason for that is this is the first time I'm in Power Automate. So what it did was it actually created a connector for Power Automate to interact with SharePoint using the account that I'm currently logged into. So in this case, I'm Redwood. So therefore, I am logged in as Redwood. Therefore, the connector that was created is also for Redwood. Now, I'm going to get into best practice in a little bit. One of the things that you're going to need to know is that in a large environment, in an environment where you're creating a business critical application, where you're actually building a workflow that is going to possibly outlast you, if not in that team, maybe in the entire organization, you want to make sure that it's still going to function even when you leave. Well, right now this connector is connected to Redwood. That's kind of a problem because if I leave the company, guess what happens? When my account is shut off or deleted outright, depending on the governances that are in place for a exiting employee, this workflow that could be business critical will stop instantaneously and may end up putting my team into the lurch. So there's 2 things we're going to have to do once this Power Automate's done. 1, associate with the Power Automate with Woodology team. But 2, we're also going to want to actually change the connectors to use a air quote either a service account or an account that has been deemed or set up so that way it's no longer an issue. Now there's definitely several ways to do that, but because like I said, I'm in a small tenant, I'm going to tell you about it, but this is something that you'll have to do on your own. One of the things that I have seen in the past with other clients and customers is that they would create another account, initially give it a F3 license. It's usually when you're in an enterprise situation, you have either E3 or E5 licenses. And F3 is a little bit more laid back, a little there's less that you can do with it. However, it's usually a good start to be able to gauge. It's also a cheaper way to license it versus an E3 or definitely an E5. Something like those are extremely expensive, and so you want to kind of to keep your costs down. Well, the way to do that is start with something a little bit more simple, an F3. And you might want to keep it in F3 and you say, oh, maybe we need to do a license with a Power Automate per flow. Or there are other options available as well. I am not a license expert, but I guarantee you your Microsoft representative will be more than happy to walk you through what is possible. So let's get back to it. So the first thing I need to do is actually go ahead and give my address. However, let's see if I can find it really quick. All right, so there's Woodology right here. And then the next thing we're going to do is the list name. Well, we create a list, so let's see if we, there it is right there, soil enrichment. So I select that. And just like that, it knows what to do. And as you can see, as I was talking to you, the entire box changed. Because I selected soil enrichment, it went out to SharePoint and said, hi, soil enrichment list, what you got for me? And it's going to say, hey, I've got 5 different columns. Here's what they are. It's going to hand it back to them, and it's going to say, these are what are required, and this is what we're expecting. And then what will end up happening is you'll be able to see that. So now let's actually fill that information out. So give me one moment. As you can see, I have actually gone ahead and filled out all the information that needs to be. You can see 3 of them are in green. It's drawing its information directly from the Microsoft form, the plot location, the start date, and the recommended enrichment value. But there's 2 that are actually functions, and those functions are ints. Why is that? Just because I filled out a number in the Microsoft form, that's great and well and all, but when it's passed over, it is still considered a string. Well, we told SharePoint that we're looking for a number, very specifically a number, and that's what it's supposed to be. In order to ensure that it is a number and it goes across as a number, we have to change a string that contains a number into the number, and therefore we use the int function, int, then open and close brackets, and inside there we actually put the question of choice. So in this case, size in acres and project cost. Here, let me show you. It's going to be ugly. It's got a whole bunch of stuff in there. Don't worry. What you do is you come to expression first. You go ahead and type in int, open and close brackets, put the cursor between the open and close brackets, and then select the one, and all that additional information will be, then you will switch over to dynamic content, and then you would click on the appropriate one. That's what I did. It's very simple, it's very straightforward, but something you want to keep in mind. I'm not going to actually make changes to it because I already know that it's correct, and we're good. So literally, we have created ourselves a workflow, a Power Automate. Sorry. The long and the short of it is, we need to test it. We got to make that a reality. Well, there's only one way to do that, and that's by testing. Now, as you can see here, test is not quite ready yet because of two things. One, let's make sure that it's no errors. So flow checker, 0 errors, 0 warnings. That's good. We're in good shape so far. Let's go ahead and hit save. Saving. Wait for it, and there we go. And there we go. And so now what we can do is we can go ahead and test it. So we're going to click on test. And in this case, because we've never ran it before, we're going to have to test it manually. So it says submit a new response to a selected form to trigger it. Well, we know which form it is, so let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go ahead and select it manually. And then we're going to click test. Okay, give me a second. Let me run over to the Microsoft form and get ready to do it. And whoop, as you can see, it's getting ready for us to actually trigger. Be right back. Okay, and I'm back. And as you can see, we've got the address right there. So far, so good. We're doing well. Now let's see here. Do you recommend enrichment of soil? Let's do a combination. Then we'll scroll down a little bit, and then we're going to say, let's see, what size of the land? Let's say 50 acres. And then what does the project cost? Let's say $1 million. And then what is the start date of this project? Ooh, let's start next week. So let's do next week, let's do the 22nd. That sounds good. We're planting in very cold weather apparently, but let's kind of forego all that normal IRL stuff. So we're going to go ahead and submit. Now that I've submitted, I'm going to run back and let's go see if our form took. And here we are. And according to this, it's still building out the visual part of it, but that's okay. I can visually see that your flow ran successfully. That works for me. So now there's only one thing left we need to do. Let's run over, check our SharePoint list. Let's see if it actually filled in the information. If all the information is there, 2 thumbs up. If we messed up somewhere, we're going to have to go back to the drawing board and get back to it. So give me 1 second. Here we are in the list, and lo and behold, look what we have. It has captured all the information properly. Everything looks great. Let's see here. We've got the address to Wrigley Field that apparently they're going to be playing in the trees now. And then we're also we got the recommended method we're going to do, combination of enrichment methods. The size in acres is 50. We've got $1 million project, and we're starting next week on the 22nd for 2024. And literally, that is all it is. This is a very simple workflow. This is very simple Power Automate that we've built, but at the same time, simple is always good. Do not over-engineer if you don't have to. Trust me, as you start getting comfortable doing these things, it will come to you. You'll start building more complex things. You're like, oh, if I do this or I take something from here, all of that is going to come over time. Don't worry about it. Start small. Start with something that's simple and easy, like grabbing the information from a Microsoft form and putting it into a SharePoint list. That's really all you need to do. Take small bite sizes. Don't try to eat the elephant all at once. It's not good. It's going to get stuck in your throat. You're going to look very strange. Guaranteed. However, that being said, I think this is a good place to stop. We've got everything we've done. We've talked about best practices, or did we? That's right. I missed one crucial feature. Let's get back into Power Automate before I leave you. And this is going to be a best practice, so stand by. Back in Power Automate, we need to do one more thing. Remember what I said as a best practice? If you're going to create a Power Automate that is going to outlive, air quotes, outlive the potential of your tenure on the team or the company or whatever the case may be, if it's a business critical solution you're building, you're going to want to make sure you do this. Let's go ahead and jump back into, so this is, I call it the home page or the splash page for the Power Automate we created. There's all kinds of information here. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to create another owner. So let's go ahead and share. And it's like, okay, we can share. That's doable. But let's go ahead and do this. So wood-all-log. There we go. And we're going to have to give it permissions. So there we go. And now we're in good shape. Now, as you can see down in the down here in connections and use, well, right now it's associated with me. In a best practice situation or a perfect environment, I would create a different account, a service account, if you will. Basically a user with a full license. Again, start with an F3. An F3 may be more than enough for simple things like this, where an F3 will allow you to do that. Is going to be much cheaper than, like I said, an E3 or definitely an E5. Or you might say, you know what, an F3 is not quite enough, but you may still find it cheaper to get an additional boost by going directly with a Power Automate license of some sort and variety. Again, talk to your Microsoft representative. There are a lot of different potentials and possibilities that may be available to you and your company. Now, with that, let's go back to our Triumph. That wasn't so hard. That was actually good. This is indeed a triumph. This is something that we have moved forward, and I know that you can do this too. Just follow the simple steps, and you also will be able to start creating these elaborate Microsoft forms and still capture that data, put into SharePoint, so that way you can do all kinds of other things with that information. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do me a favor, leave a comment, let me know what you thought, give me a subscribe, a like, and also ring that notification bell. Click on that so that way the next time I release a new video, you'll have a chance to take a look at when it's first released. Thanks, and I hope you have a great one. Take care.